Man. Alright, stream, my bad. Today's gonna be a bit different with me being banned from PlayStation. We are going to actually be starting my reaction videos. Y'all gonna be doing it with me. So, with that said, I thought it would be a great time to start with the biggest shit going on in the world right now, the Epstein files. I've already seen a few videos. Not none of the videos I'm gonna click on are anything that I've watched already. So we're gonna be watching a lot of the stuff for the first time together. But I have seen videos on this subject, so I'm curious to know what y'all think about everything, how y'all feel about it. I definitely have my opinions, and I, I mean, I'm obviously doing this because I want to talk about it. But yeah, like this shit's crazy. I've been saying since 2020 that these people are evil. Like they're corrupt. They're doing the devil's work. They're doing this to gain favor from the devil. Uh, like essentially, all of this ties. All conspiracies tie back to God, and the reason why all of them happen are because they're trying to. If you've ever had any doubts or anything, like actually look into the stuff and like why they did what they did, and you will understand. Like it's crazy as fuck. But let's dive into it. Um, I don't want to bore you guys too much with my personal opinions on it. But yeah, let's look this shit up. All right. So it says that I watched this, but my mouse was like hovered over it. I didn't watch it at all. So like I don't know nothing. But shout out to Propaganda and Company. Um, y'all make sure y'all like and share their videos. I'll do the same because I'll be using them for the first 20 minutes. But yeah, let's dive in.
And I don't like making content just for content's sake, especially when I have nothing new to add to the conversation. That said, I do keep getting requests from people who genuinely cannot wrap their heads around what these files actually are, why they are being released now, and how to interpret them. So in this video, I'm going to explain what exactly happened, why this is happening, and how we maybe should be understanding everything that we're seeing. So let's dive in. Firstly, let's briefly recap why anyone is even talking about Jeffrey Epstein in the first place. Who is this guy? Well, long story short, Jeffrey Epstein went from being a complete nobody with no clear career path,
He's still a
education,
loser,
title,
so.
or notable achievement to becoming one of the world's most connected financial power brokers. He amassed enormous wealth, elite access, and relationships that placed him shoulder to shoulder with some of the most powerful and influential figures on the planet. According to the New York Times, Epstein made much of his fortune by providing tax and estate services to billionaires. He was also a prolific social networker whose connections included business leaders, royalty, politicians, and academics. His friendships with public figures such as Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, and the Crown Princess of Norway attracted significant controversy. Documents released by the House Democratic Caucus in September 2025 also showed that he maintained connections with billionaires like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, and influential figures like Steve Bannon. Okay, now I'm not going to go too deep into Epstein's background because it's already been extensively covered elsewhere. What matters for our purposes in this video, however, is leverage. Leverage is the key concept that explains Epstein's role and his value. Intelligence agencies, political operators, and power brokers don't simply accumulate information. They accumulate leverage over people and institutions. Now that leverage can come in many forms. Sometimes it's positive, access to capital, donors, or elite networks. Other times, it's coercive, exploiting personal weaknesses, secrets, or illegal behavior. In Epstein's world, that leverage often revolved around sex. His properties and parties functioned as these environments where powerful people could indulge in desires that they could never safely pursue in public. Those desires, once documented or facilitated, became leverage. And once leverage exists, control follows. This context explains why Epstein was closely connected to figures like Donald Trump in the 1990s. Trump's acquisition of the Miss Universe pageant placed hundreds, if not thousands, of young aspiring models into his...
Hold on. So, with all that being said, I also want to put this in y'all's ear. through the emails, he doesn't necessarily come out and say that he's a Mossad agent, but you can piece it together basically. Like, he's very pro-Israel. He's backed by them. He's been paid by them numerous amount of times. It's all been documented, um, and yeah, you guys will see in some of the other videos that like how deep this shit goes and like how it plays into the current state of America right now. Shit, not just America, the world.
Orbit. That environment provided Epstein with access to a steady stream of young, beautiful women, which he could then funnel into his broader network. But Epstein's activities went far beyond consensual adult behavior. He routinely procured prostitutes, trafficked human beings, and engaged in non-consensual sex, including of minors. By 2005, numerous young women had already come forward alleging that Epstein had sexually assaulted them or arranged for their abuse. That year, Palm Beach police opened an investigation after a parent reported that Epstein had sexually abused her 14-year-old daughter. Federal investigators later identified at least 36 girls, some as young as 14, who alleged sexual abuse. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty in Florida state court to procuring a child for prostitution and soliciting a prostitute. As part of a highly controversial plea deal approved by then U.S. Attorney General Alexander Acosta, Epstein served just under 13 months in custody, much of which on work release. By 2008, Epstein was officially convicted as a serial sex offender. Now, this is very important because anyone who associated with Epstein after that point knew without a doubt that he was a convicted rapist of underage girls. So when you see correspondence involving figures like Noam Chomsky, Elon Musk, David Stern, and many others in the Epstein files, understand this clearly. They knew that Epstein was a rapist. Now, continued contact does not automatically prove criminal guilt, but it raises serious questions about judgment, ethics, and integrity. Despite his previous charges, Epstein didn't stop. In 2019, he was arrested again, this time on federal sex trafficking charges. Before his trial could begin, however, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell, officially ruled a suicide. Now, because of his death, all federal criminal charges against him were dismissed. But there was still...
So, I want to say this. I've seen this video that it was just, at first I thought it was a random video, but it ultimately is like connected to Epstein. There was this guy, I forgot his name. He had a local cable access show, and he was exposing, I believe it was somewhere in the East Coast. He was exposing corrupt cops, and there was this specific corrupt cop that he was exposing for using like excessive force, being part of like some kind of group. But essentially, the guy that he claimed was very corrupt ended up like causing harm to the guy multiple times. I believe the guy died years later, but the cop that he was accusing ended up getting arrested for being like a mafia hitman or something like that. And then he was actually, he got arrested, and then years later he became, Jeffrey Epstein became his cellmate. So, with that being said, this guy was like a big ass bodybuilder. And then if you have seen the pictures of Epstein's neck when like they show like he committed suicide, he has like a fat red ring around his neck, and his cellmate was really fucking like big. So like it's possible that he could have done that. But then that's one theory, and then I have another theory that Epstein fucking. So he was into eugenics, he was into cloning, he was into moving your consciousness to another body. That was all things that he's been interested in. It's facts. You can look into it. There was also something that I seen months ago of Jeffrey Epstein being alive somewhere overseas. I don't want to say like exactly where overseas, but I think it was in like the Middle East, I believe. But he like the guy looked exactly like him, to the T, exactly like him. And So with that being said, like back to him being interested in into like cloning it and all that stuff. What if what we found was one shell, and he actually transferred his consciousness to another shell, and he's out there living freely? Because honestly, with all the information and power that he had, I don't feel like he's dead. I don't feel like he's dead at all. But you never know. The world is a lot stranger than we believe.
New information that could come out about him because Epstein had maintained a decades-long partnership with Ghislaine Maxwell, who recruited and groomed underage girls on his behalf. In 2021, Maxwell was convicted in federal court on sex trafficking and conspiracy charges for helping Epstein abuse minors. So despite his untimely death and the fact that the government dropped the charges against him, we were still able to obtain new information through the Maxwell case. Epstein's elite social circle and the abrupt end to his prosecution fueled widespread suspicion. Many people believed he maintained detailed records of powerful individuals, used those records for blackmail, and was ultimately silenced to protect those people. Public skepticism intensified due to the inconsistency surrounding his death, medical examiners' findings, surveillance failures, and the sheer scale of evidence collected against him. The term Epsteinfiles refers to evidence gathered in the criminal investigations into Epstein and his associates. These materials, stored in the FBI Sentinel system, include flight logs, contact books, emails, photographs, videos, and court documents. Portions had been released in heavily redacted form gradually over the years, but most of it has remained sealed. Until now. As more victims came forward demanding accountability, and as public pressure grew, the files became a cultural and political issue. Despite his own documented association with Epstein, Donald Trump publicly promised transparency during his re-election campaign in 2024. In fact, during the Biden administration, Trump allies, including Kash Patel,
He promised transparency, and all we got was redacted files, redactions after redactions after redactions after redactions. There was entire pages full of redacted stuff. Yeah, yellow. There's I had ChatGPT make that, but but yeah, like how, it goes to show, like these people will tell the masses whatever they want just to get their vote, and then not follow up, and then the masses are content with accepting it. When are we as a people going to step up? When are we as a people going to make some changes and make something happen?
promoted claims that the FBI was deliberately withholding an Epstein client list and urged its release. Shortly after Trump returned to office in 2025, the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi told the Fox News journalist John Roberts that the Justice Department would publish the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. She specifically said, "It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That has been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that." A week later, on February 27th, she released documents that contained no significant new information, however. Faced with outcry from a disappointed public, Bondi demanded that the FBI director, Kash Patel, provide the extensive material she had originally requested from him. A few months later, on June 6th, the Joe Rogan Experience aired an interview with Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, who said of the Epstein matter, "We've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release." The DOJ publicly released
Why is the lead of the FBI doing podcasts with Joe Rogan instead of one you could call a fucking a press conference like whenever you want? You're the director of the FBI. And two, it just makes me feel like all this shit is just for entertainment. Like it's a distraction to something more. But like I said, a lot of this stuff ties back to religion. Like this crazy stuff that was going on that island. I'm not going to get into it yet because I want to get brought up, probably not in this video, but in other videos. But when it gets brought up, I'm going to speak on what I've learned about all of that, and then like tell y'all what I pieced together and everything.
memo on July 7th stating it did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties and would not release further Epstein-related documents. When asked what Bondi meant in February when she said that Epstein material was on her desk, the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt said Bondi had been referring to the entirety of all the paperwork related to Epstein's crimes rather than any specific client list. Bondi offered a similar clarification at a cabinet meeting the following day. The administration's position drew criticism from across the political spectrum. Democratic representatives challenged the findings, while right-wing activists and influencers, including the Hodge twins, Alex Jones, Rogan O'Hanley, and Liz Wheeler, expressed skepticism. Bondi herself faced particular criticism from many in the MAGA movement. Joe Rogan called the administration's reversal a line in the sand, particularly for supporters who had backed Trump based on promised transparency surrounding the Epstein files. This began to frustrate Donald Trump. In mid-July, he characterized the Epstein files as falsified documents created by political opponents such as Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. Now, this is important because remember, Trump himself and his surrogates were calling for the Epstein files to be released. And this goes as far back as 2015. When Trump was asked for his thoughts on former President Bill Clinton, he responded, "Nice guy, got a lot of problems coming up in my opinion with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems." Later that same year, when asked again about Clinton and the alleged sexual abuse that took place on Epstein's private Caribbean island, Trump said, "That island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it." Fast forward a decade to his campaign for re-election, and you have tons of statements from Trump surrogates and his allies proving that this isn't a Democratic Party instigated campaign to hurt Donald Trump. In December of 2023, Kash Patel posted on Truth Social, "I've been calling for all of it to be released so the public can have accountability. We must find out who pedoed around with Epstein." In September of 2024, Patel posted again on Truth Social, "Anyone else want to see the Diddy list that the FBI and DOJ have but won't release, like the Epstein Black Book? The deep state won't end until we put Donald Trump back at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue." And in January of 2025, at his own Senate confirmation hearing, Kash Patel publicly stated that he would help secure the release of the Epstein files. Senator Marsha Blackburn asked him, "So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?" Patel responded, "Absolutely, Senator." And later in May of 2025, Kash Patel again reiterated that he would secure the release. When Fox News' Brett Baier asked him, "You're not going to withhold information from the public, are you?" Patel responded, "I'm not going to withhold information from the American public. Ever." Elon Musk also chimed in. Musk, in a conversation with Tucker Carlson, wrote, "Part of why Kamala is getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public. And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome." And as we stated earlier, Trump's own son called for the release of the Epstein list. While the president's son does not have an official position in Trump's administration, on the campaign trail, he emerged as one of the most vocal figures calling on the Epstein files to be released. In July of 2023, Trump Jr. posted on X, "Show us all the Epstein client list now. Why would anyone protect those scumbags? Ask yourselves this question daily and the answer becomes very apparent."
What's crazy is, fool, yo, daddy on there. Daddy's one of them people that you talking about. There's files of him essaying like a 14-year-old, and if I'm not wrong, there was also another one saying that he had got her pregnant. So I see why it's taken so long for all this to come out, because he's trying to get his name out of everything. That's why it was so heavily redacted.
In January of 2024, he posted again, "Everyone knows Bill Clinton was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane and island a lot. Literally, no one is at all surprised that he's all over the release. What we want to know is all the other names that the government has been hiding and running cover for. That will actually be revealing." Then in June of 2024, at the Turning Point USA event, Trump Jr. publicly stated, "I am on every list except the Epstein list. We haven't heard anything about that one in a while. How is it that my father could be convicted of 34 crimes crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light. It's almost like they're trying to protect these pedophiles. So Trump characterizing the Epstein files as a hoax created by political opponents is absurd. Now, despite Trump's resistance, even he couldn't convince MAGA to give up on the Epstein files. Public interest continued and culminated in Congress attempting to force its release. In July of 2025, Congressman Ro Khanna introduced the Epstein Files Transparency Act, requiring the Attorney General to release all related files within 30 days and provide Congress with an unredacted list of all government officials and politically exposed persons named in them. Following this, Trump increasingly resisted questions about Epstein. Shortly after Ro Khanna's bill was introduced, he stated, "I don't understand it. Why would they be so interested? He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't." A few weeks later, FBI Director and Trump ally Kash Patel testified before Congress that Epstein acted alone and had no connection to other people in regards to sex trafficking. FBI Director Kash Patel told U.S. senators that there is no credible information in case files that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked young women to anyone other than himself.
So
Republican
he did all
Louisiana
this by
Senator
himself.
John Kennedy asked Patel about his knowledge of the Epstein files. "You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?" Patel responded, "There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals." Pam Bondi, appointed Attorney General in February of 2025, initially promised transparency, but then later worked to limit the scope of disclosures, citing victim protection. This combination of deflection, minimization, and delay has only intensified suspicion. It seems clear that Trump, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi were attempting to reduce the interest in the Epstein files and turn public attention away from them. That obviously didn't work, however. So in September of 2025, Representative Thomas Massey filed a discharge petition to force a House vote on the transparency bill that Ro Khanna introduced back in July. The bill passed overwhelmingly, 427 to 1, and was signed into law. Despite the legal mandate, the Department of Justice failed to release all the files on time. Initial releases were heavily redacted, which drew bipartisan criticism. After months of delay, however, on January 30th of this year, the DOJ finally released approximately 3.5 million pages of documents. These are the Epstein files that everyone is now discussing, and they are vast. They reveal disturbing insights into elite networks, power structures, financial practices, and patterns of abuse. It's hard to focus on just one thing because there are so many documents with so many controversies. And it turns out actually that this is only about half of all the documents there are, so there still needs to be another release of about another 3 million documents. But in summary, we have seen information confirming, at the very least,
I just want to also add, like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is what they're willing to tell us. So that means that there's so much more information that we are unaware of. There's so much more stuff going on that we probably won't know about until years later.
that certain theories or suspicions are more than just speculative conspiracies or anti-Semitic tropes. The idea that elites are engaging in demonic, satanic, violent sexual rituals is not just some crack pipe Freemason Illuminati underground conspiracy theory originating from 4chan troll accounts. It is actually a legitimate question that needs to be further explored and investigated, and the Epstein files confirm that, as there are references to it via eyewitness testimony about dismembered bodies and all sorts of disgusting violent acts that the government has had access to for many years now. I want to show you tweets that you need.
Y'all need to apologize to all those conspiracy theorists that y'all was calling crazy and telling them that they need help. But I've known about a lot of this shit since 2020. All because of Young Pharaoh. And Young Pharaoh, I thank you a lot, like so much. If it wasn't for you, I would never have woken up. That shit helped me start seeing the world for what it was. And ever since then, like, I started moving a lot different.
To see that summarize much about what these new Epstein files reveal about the mindset, beliefs, and practices of someone like Jeffrey Epstein and the people he's connected to. This is the way the Jew makes money, and made a fortune in the past 10 years, selling short the shipping futures, let the goyim deal in the real world. This tweet is in reference to a 2009 email in which Jeffrey Epstein replied to Roger Schenck. Then David Miller includes a quote from an article in which the Sephardic leader Rabbi Ovadia Yusuf says, "Goyim were born only to serve us. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel. In response to that, Candace Owens tweeted, "Remember at the end of last year."
So if y'all haven't pieced it together and picked up on it, Goyim is people who aren't Jewish. So they look at us as less than. They feel like they're the higher class. So I'm not saying all of them, but there's certain people in that religion that feel like they're higher than the rest of us, and that we're peasants, and that we're here to appease them, basically.
Here, when I was called anti-Semitic for telling you this is the literal religious worldview of many people in power, type in Goy or Goyim in the Epsteinfiles and be sure to tag a Christian who needs to wake up and leave the Zionist cause. So what should the takeaway from all of this be? How do you make sense of 3.5 million documents? Firstly, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi definitely attempted to cover up the Epstein files and should be impeached for doing so. In fact, Ro Khanna has already stated that an impeachment filing is already drafted. Secondly, these are not all the files. On Sunday, Ro Khanna told Meet the Press, the release is not good enough. And if we don't get the remaining files, then Thomas Massie and I are prepared to move on impeachment or contempt. But even these files shocked the conscience of the country. I mean, you have some of the most wealthy individuals, tech leaders, finance leaders, politicians, all implicated in some way, he said. It's frankly one of the largest scandals, in my view, in our country's history. There is a demand for elite accountability. Even the victims of Epstein's crimes are not satisfied. On Friday, a group of Epstein victims in a statement slammed the DOJ for the incomplete release of the files. Quote, "This latest release of Jeffrey Epstein files is being sold as transparency, but what it actually does is expose survivors. Once again, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed, while the men who abused us remain hidden and protected. That is outrageous. As survivors, we should never be the ones named, scrutinized, and re-traumatized while Epstein's enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. This is a betrayal of the very people this process is supposed to serve." Thirdly,
That is 100% facts. How are you supposed to be protecting these people if you're putting their faces, their information, and the things that they've gone through, you're putting it out there for the whole world to see? But for the people who caused these things, for the people who did these acts, we don't have their names. We have a few of their names, but we don't have everyone. There hasn't been any actions. Nobody's been called to court. Nobody's been arrested. There's been nothing done. But let this be done by Tom down the street and Billy around the corner. You would have everything on everything that they've done for the last 10 fucking years blasted. It makes no sense why we are protecting these people. All of this information needs to be out there. There needs to be actions made immediately. And it's sad that the world, not the world, that the government has not moved on this shit already. It's sad.
The issue of Israel First Jewish supremacy is real, and it's time to stop hiding behind claims of anti-Semitism. Powerful Jewish elites in this country are in fact using their influence and connection to advance one another's wealth and power, openly admitting to engaging in questionable financial transactions and laughing at the non-Jewish goyim along the way. Their loyalty to Israel is real and is equal to, potentially even greater than their loyalty to America. For example, one crucial FBI document revealed in these Epstein files is an interview between an agent and a confidential human source, otherwise known as a CHS. A CHS is essentially someone who has access to information that is valuable for law enforcement or intelligence operations. This specific CHS claimed the following. 1. The infamous Jewish Zionist lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who represented Epstein, was co-opted by the Mossad and subscribed to their mission. 2. Dershowitz influenced many students from wealthy families, such as Jared Kushner. 3. Epstein was serving both U.S. and Allied intelligence, and we all know who this ally is, of course. 4. Epstein trained under Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak as a spy. And 5. The Jewish movement, Shabbat, was doing everything they can to co-opt the Trump presidency. And finally, Trump was compromised by Israel, and Jared Kushner, his Jewish Zionist son-in-law, is the one actually running the White House. Since returning to office, Trump has given Israel billions of dollars.
look into who owns and runs all of the major businesses in entertainment and gas, transportation, um, shit, technology, uh, fucking weapons. Did I say transportation? Freaking the fuck the health department. Like, yeah, look look at who's at the top, and then shit, even the two underneath, and come back and tell me what they all have in common. I'm not gonna say it on here, but it's crazy as fuck. And I will say, maybe Kanye's not crazy. Maybe he's been saying some real shit and been called crazy because he's calling out the people that are in control, the people who control the narrative.
and tiptoed on the edge of an incredibly destructive and unpopular war with Iran on behalf of Zionist interests. In fact, on the same day as the Epstein file release, Trump bypassed Congress and approved a major new arms sale to Israel worth almost $7 billion. So while there are many controversies in the Epstein files, I think this one is the most disturbing and needs to be explored. All in all, while the Department of Justice hopes this will be the end of the Epstein files controversy, it seems that this is actually just the beginning, as every hour people gain deeper and deeper insight into the crimes hidden in the 3.5 million documents revealed. The web of contaminated politicians, billionaires, actors, and elite continues to grow, implicating almost the entire oligarchy in one way or another. So there are a few things that need to happen after this. 1. The rest of the files need to be released. 2. More investigations need to be opened up regarding third parties mentioned in the files who conducted business with Epstein. 3. Those attempting to cover up the Epstein controversy, such as Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, need to be impeached and investigated. 4. An investigation into Alan Dershowitz, Jared Kushner, and the Mossad's influence over Trump needs to take place. Now, I quickly glossed over some pieces of information such as Epstein's connection to Mossad, so I suggest you watch this interview where journalist Max Blumenthal unpacks the Mossad connections to Epstein with Judge Napolitano. So what do you think? What are the major takeaways from the Epstein files that you believe people need to know about? Let me know in the comment section. Also, I want to give a very special shout out to all the members of my channel. Thank you for supporting my...
Alright. Let's give brother a like. Yeah, go watch. Well, not. I mean, you could definitely go watch, but go like and share his stuff. That was a great breakdown. Here's his page right here. Propaganda and Company. Epstein Files Explained for Dummies. Hey, man. Ain't no damn dummy. But yeah. Why is that spelled wrong? Alright, I might be a dummy. Ooh. See? I told y'all I'm gonna click on stuff that I have not seen already. And what's interesting is that I had somebody text me right before saying that the Mormons are involved in the Epstein files. And then look at this video right here.
This is a breakdown of every Mormon connection found in the Epstein files, including a reference to Mormon blood and what this has to do with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With the newest batch of Epstein files that just dropped, there are a handful of documents that mention Mormonism in some way. Most of them are about tickets to the Book of Mormon musical, but then it starts to get a little sinister. This document talks about a possible victim of Epstein's who was an ex-Mormon, and after leaving her faith, her family, her boyfriend, she was left quite vulnerable, and Jeffrey Epstein preyed on her, and she became his personal assistant. This document records Epstein attempting to pay for the BYU Idaho tuition of a redacted student in 2011. As BYU is a church school, there is a good chance the student was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Epstein had a history of doing favors for or paying for the education of girls he liked, so it's possible that this student was a victim of Epstein's or was related to one of his victims. This is easily the weirdest part of this whole thing. This document explains how Epstein paid for a redacted girl's school tuition as long as she sent him a pint of Mormon blood every week. I don't really know what's going on.
So, I don't know why it had to be Mormon blood specifically. One thing that I do know is that when it came to children, why they would torture and extract their blood is for adrenochrome. Adrenochrome is a chemical. It's a chemical compound in our body that happens. It's basically our adrenaline rush. When our adrenaline is activated, that's adrenochrome, and they extract it by torturing. And yeah, I don't want to go too deep into that, but yeah, the movie Monsters Inc. That's a honestly that's a cleaned up version of what actually happens. They put fear in the child to extract the fear. Shit's crazy, but the pint of Mormon blood, this nigga's a vampire.
Going on here, but the whole thing reads like erotic fan fiction, and it's dated to several years after Epstein's death, so unless proven otherwise, I'm going to assume this is actually just a fictional story. I could be wrong, but let's hope. And now to possibly the more concerning piece. Epstein sent an email that said, "Had to meet with the head of the Mormon church." For all the research I've done, I see no evidence to indicate that the church was involved in any meaningful way with Epstein, even if he had a passing encounter with someone high up in church leadership. But what everyone else is missing is a huge piece of context that completely changes what this event is even referring to. To get the full breakdown of this and all the instances of Mormon in the Epstein files, watch this video on my YouTube channel.
Oh, that's 2 hours. We ain't doing 2 hours. Well, I mean, we could do 2 hours, but let's get some more in here. And what's crazy is TMZ is trying to cover it, but the owner of TMZ was on Epstein's Island. That shit is crazy. Oh, this is Trump calling a reporter very unprofessional because she's asking about the Epstein files. Look at how he reacts.
Did you read those new files that were published by the Department of Justice?
I have a lot of things I'm doing. A lot of things I'm doing. I don't know. You mentioned two names. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're fine. Otherwise, it would have been major headlines.
A lot of women who are survivors of Epstein's are unhappy with those redactions that came out. Some of them, entire witness interviews are totally blacked
Shoulder
out.
shrugs.
Do you think that they should be more
transparent? The fact
transparent?
that they thought they released too much. I heard that, and you tell me something else. No, I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Now that nothing.
See how he's trying to push past it.
There was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto.
Y'all call this whole thing a conspiracy, and it got proven right. Be careful what you say.
What would you say to the survivors who feel
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. She's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face. You know why? You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth. And
no, Trump, you're not telling the truth.
Organization, and they should be.
But CNN is a dishonest organization.
On the Epstein files, you talk about Democrats who.
Major news is fake news.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is based.
Damn, I should have watched that. I could use that. Bringing ideas to life.
By the time this video gets out there, there's probably going to be even more. But with a brand new multi-million page Epstein data dump, I wanted to dive in and look at the most immediately damaging stuff that we have, and also talk about just how badly the government screwed up, because it is bad, like historically bad levels of incompetence. Let's start with this, because we absolutely need the context. This is Todd Blanche, former personal lawyer for Donald Trump, who is now Deputy Attorney General of the United States. On January 30th, 2026, Blanche took the stage for a massive press conference unveiling that the DOJ and the FBI would be releasing about 3.5 million pages of new Epstein files as required by congressional law. The important part is at about 4 minutes and 10 seconds in, where he discusses the redaction guidelines and bloviates at length about how strict the criteria was, how hard their staff worked on these redactions, and how nothing was being withheld on the basis of national security. If you actually listened to him and took his words at face value, which you absolutely should not do, this is the most transparent administration ever. The quality of their work is unimpeachable, and the redactions that they made were only to protect victim information, nothing else. Sadly, that is a lie. Over the course of today's video, I'll go through a series of examples in an effort to give as comprehensive a look as I can so far for this file dump. But at the end of it all, I want everyone to consider a question. Is the current governing administration in the United States telling the truth? Here we go. Item number 1, which is actually 2 documents in this case, EFTA 01660679 and EFTA 01660651. These documents show a collection of insane allegations against Donald Trump. These come from the NTOC, National Threat Operations Center at the FBI, which is where they process and vet public tips, and some of them are very obviously marked as not credible. Others are flagged as no contact made after attempting to follow up with the caller. But here and there, you start finding that some of these reports resulted in a, quote, lead being sent to conduct interviews. Obviously, I can't comment on the authenticity of these allegations overall. But there's something else I found interesting, something far more important in my mind, that speaks to the credibility of the DOJ, the Department of Justice itself, and their decision-making when it came to these redactions. Look at these 2 documents. Separate files, sure, but not always different content. Quote, complainant was spoken to and deemed not credible. Additional research showed 3 separate blank, and then it's all redacted. However, this file isn't. The rest of the sentence says, quote, incidents involving police which requested in mandatory psychiatric evaluations, end quote. That right there, although small in a vacuum, is the very first example in a massive, massive pattern. A pattern where the DOJ is redacting things that make no sense. Things that they have no legal right to withhold, and things that may in fact matter a great deal, we just don't really have the ability to know because we don't have the full picture. Example, they literally redacted the word none in this file. And you can straight up read some of the other redactions because they're not centered properly. It's a joke. Even still, keeping in mind that the goal here is to analyze everything as objectively as possible, we need to do a bit of a fact check because despite massively viral social media claims all over the place, these 2 files were not actually pulled down or deleted immediately after publication. There were some 404 errors displayed on the DOJ website briefly, but they were ultimately resolved within minutes, I think, actually, and the files are now clearly visible again. I'm not sure why that happened. The sheer amount of traffic may very well have played a part, as people flooded into the directory specifically searching for those particular files, and it's entirely possible that the DOJ panicked, deleted them, and then reinstated them, like they appear to have done previously with a different batch of files, but this time I honestly see no indication of that happening. This time it feels like a genuine glitch. Do you want to know what isn't a glitch? This right here, an FD 302 victim interview, which is mostly redacted, clearly protecting certain perpetrator names alongside the potential victims, but even from what we see unredacted, quote, Maxwell presented blank to Trump and they had a conversation for approximately 20 minutes. Blank was invited to Mar-a-Lago, where she was given a tour by Trump with Epstein and Maxwell present. Nothing happened between blank and Trump. By the things that Maxwell said, it was made clear that blank was available. Maxwell said things like, oh, I think he likes you. Aren't you lucky? This is great. End quote. Put whatever kind of spin on that you want to. But what I see, personally, is a victim being presented to someone with the obvious implication that they can have her if they want her. These are very serious allegations, and they're not the only ones. The sole focus of the video, by the way, isn't just Donald Trump, so I'm not going to read all of them, but the gist of it is that there are incredibly damaging revelations about how close Trump and Epstein were, so far beyond what we've been told is true, it is no longer possible to hand-wave the files away as just a Democrat hoax.
And this shows you why he was reacting the way he was to that reporter. He was being arrogant. He was shrugging her questions off, calling her rude, saying that she's putting out false news, that she's lying. Like, how is she lying when she's asking a question? And why are you so dismissive and saying that America should move on? Why should we move on? Nobody's been prosecuted. Nobody has been brought to justice yet. Why would we move on? We'll give this video a like.
Pivoting back to the first two documents, I also want to point out something else. In between the spreadsheets and the accusations, we have emails in August of 2025. But the thing about these emails is that here we can see that they...
My bad, I'm talking over him. The worst of the Epstein files, our corrupt elites, upper echelon. Y'all go give them a like and a follow. I appreciate y'all for putting this content out so that I could use it in my stream. Thank you very much.
They clearly acknowledge redacting a reporter's name, who explicitly is not a victim, Anthony Sibeli, I think is how you say it, while also, on one of the sheets, failing to redact an actual potential victim name, Leslie McMichael, in a further display of incompetence. Like I said previously, the video isn't focused solely on Donald Trump, but we're looking at well over 5,000 mentions of his name, and that's only the searchable portions of the archive that they've indexed, which hasn't even all been released.
Imagine your name being mentioned 5,000 times, and you say that you're not close to the person. So why are you being brought up 5,000 times?
Let's move on to someone else, okay? Arguably the largest individual catalyst who has been deliberately stoking speculation about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, and that is Elon Musk. Elon has long maintained his near total separation from Epstein. He claims that the photograph of him and Ghislaine Maxwell is just a photobomb that she perpetrated and he had no idea about it. He claims that he was invited to Epstein Island but refused, and he desperately lashes out at anyone who insinuates otherwise over the past several months. Quote, "Shame on Sky News for this utterly misleading headline. Anyone pushing this false narrative deserves complete contempt. Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I refused. Yet they named me even before Prince Andrew, who did visit." End quote. Strong words, very defensive, but it turns out that we actually have emails between Musk, Epstein, and Leslie Groff, one of Epstein's assistants, reading, quote, Elon to Epstein, "Will be in the BVI/St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit?" End quote. That's a little bit curious given his proclamations that Epstein invited him to the island, but let's read on. Epstein replies, "Any day 1st to 8th. Play it by ear if you want. Always space for you." After which Elon says, "Okay, probably the 1st then." They correspond back and forth a bit longer, but anyone who reads this conversation can decidedly say with certainty that Epstein was not asking Elon to go to his island. Elon was trying to go.
Exactly.
Oh, that's not enough? Okay, I can understand that. Some people really drank the Kool-Aid. Here's an email from Musk to Epstein after Epstein asks, "How many people will you be for the heli to the island?" saying, quote, "Probably just Tallulah and me." Tallulah was his wife at the time. "What day/night will be the wildest party on your island?" End quote. Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I refused. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing, bucko.
Ultimately, for this particular set of exchanges, it doesn't look like Elon actually attended the party in 2012 or 2013, but a couple of months later, in February, we see this thread between Musk and Epstein, seemingly indicating that Epstein was given some kind of private tour of SpaceX. Interestingly, when it comes to Epstein receiving tours of various facilities, that's not even the only example. Right here, with this email, we can look at the competence of the redaction team yet again, and it's really not good. In this particular email from March of 2014, Epstein is corresponding with an unknown, redacted individual, and yet in this next thread, document EFTA 0098580, we can see the same exact email, this time unredacted, with the name Alan Jones. There is no justifiable or legal reason to be redacting that man's name. Just for the sake of really hammering this point home so that even the brain-dead fans of Elon Musk are still able to fully comprehend, let me read one more email thread before moving on to the next document. This one. December of 2012, which for clarity's sake is after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of procuring a minor for prostitution in 2008. Quote from Epstein, "You are welcome to stay or just come for the day. Plenty of room. I will send a heli to get you." End quote. To which Elon replies, "Do you have any parties planned? I've been working to the edge of sanity this year, and so once my kids head home after Christmas, I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's or elsewhere and let loose. The invitation is much appreciated, but a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for." And
Let that sink in. But a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for. He's looking to go let loose, wreak havoc. He wants to. How I feel, I think he was there for the torturing and shit, not the SA. Although I'm not excusing him if like I don't know, it's definitely possible, but he's a very Elon Musk is a very dark individual. He's got a if there's a picture of him in an armor set with the fucking Baphomet on it, I believe, or the Baphomet or the devil, and then his I believe his ex-wife now, but she was very dark as well. Like both of them are very dark individuals, so that is alarming.
Quote. Still not finished, by the way. Epstein replies, "Understood, I will see you on St. Barth. The ratio on my island might make Talila uncomfortable," end quote. After which Elon chimes in again, quote, "Ratio is not a problem for Tallulah," end quote. Honestly, I really don't think I have to spell it out here, but this is Elon Musk asking to join the most notorious pedophile in recent history on his personal island to let loose, deliberately requesting to be there for the wildest parties, and when Epstein indicates ratio, as in a lot of young women, which might make Elon's wife uncomfortable, Elon says, "Not a problem," and this takes place years after Epstein was convicted of sex crimes. Riddle me that one, Elon fans.
Sickening.
Side point, here's two different versions of the same exact page.
And y'all still gonna go out there and buy Teslas, cyber trucks, these fucking cyber robots, all this shit. And y'all are supporting evil. And y'all are content with it.
That the DOJ uploaded. One of them redacts Elon's email address, the other redacts metadata. Combined, you can see the full page, obviously, thus rendering all of the redactions void, and they even shouldn't have been censored in the first place, so double whammy. Amazing. Now that we're talking about billionaires, however, let's just keep talking about that precious class of person, the billionaires. Remember Bill Gates, notoriously close with Epstein for like decades? Yeah. This email right here appears to show that Gates allegedly requested antibiotics from Epstein so that he could secretly give them to Melinda after contracting an STD from Russian girls. Quote, "To add insult to the injury, you then implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD, your request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your penis. You also made it clear to me that I am not to refer to blank, as that is another topic that must remain between the..."
To add insult to injury, he then implored me to please delete the emails regarding your STD. You request that I provide you antibiotics that you can give to Melinda in session. And yeah, no, that's crazy. This fool caught something essaying little girls on the island and then gave it to his wife. What the fuck you get, you fucking weirdo?
The two of us, end quote. I'm just going to throw this out there. Having secrets between you and Jeffrey Epstein that have to remain between the two of you
very alarming.
Doesn't look very good. In fact, it might make some people think that you're guilty of heinous crimes. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. And then, on top of that shit, he has been documented to speak on depopulation. This guy is a computer tech guy. Why are you getting involved in to depopulation? You're getting involved in finding ways to do that by like tampering with the food, our fucking vaccinations, shit, the air we breathe, the water we drink. Like he's got a hand in everything that's causing us to lose our health. head of Microsoft. Hey, that game was fire. World of Warships. Hey.
For context, by the way, speaking to Vanity Fair in March of 2022, Melinda Gates said, quote, "I did not like that he had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. No, I made that clear to him." Then saying, after meeting Epstein a single time, quote again, "I regretted it the second I walked in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. My heart breaks for those women," end quote. At various times afterwards, she heavily insinuates that association with Epstein was one of the factors behind their entire divorce. And if I had to speculate here, I would say that sharing secrets with Epstein and trying to sneak her antibiotics could hypothetically have caused a marriage to crumble. Jumping over to an entirely separate but distinctly kind of related topic, theories have been circulating for many, many years that Epstein was an agent of Israeli intelligence, Mossad, and this document right here,
started off the stream telling y'all,
confidential human source, directly claims that Donald Trump and Alan Dershowitz as well were co-opted and compromised by Israel. I think it's worth noting that confidential human source intelligence is not a public tip line. It's a cultivated agency source working directly with the FBI prior to that point in time. It's not an agent or an employee, it's a source, which doesn't necessarily mean it's true, by the way, but it's not a random phone call. This is a significantly elevated level of intelligence gathering far beyond just anonymous tips. Still, as with practically every single other document, the DOJ and the FBI, I guess, appear to be breaking the law. Looking at this right here, we can see Harry Tenosodenbio, however the fuck you say that. That name is clearly visible right here. But then redacted in the very same line. This guy is an Indonesian billionaire politician, by the way, continuing the trend of billionaires being deeply associated with Epstein, but it's difficult to emphasize just how pathetic it is to have the same name illegally redacted on one side, but left plainly visible on the other side of the same line of the same document. A child could quite literally do a better job of redacting these files. Not necessarily a billionaire, yet, I should say, but Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce appointed by Trump himself, was also visiting Epstein's island as per these files, corresponding with Leslie Groff at the time. Once again, Leslie Groff was Epstein's assistant, and this happened in 2012, despite Lutnick in 2025 saying, quote, "In the 6 to 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again," referring to Epstein, after an interaction from 2005. Don't believe me? Okay, sure. That's fine. Here's the actual video. It's a whole lot worse.
And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh yeah, dude. He's so bad that Howard Lutnick was directly emailing with Epstein and his assistant about going to lunch on the island in 2012, 7 years after he vowed to never be in the same room with him because he's gross.
Everybody putting on a motherfucking act. They're putting on the act to save face. All of these motherfuckers is nasty. They nasty as fuck. Oh my god. I'm gonna take not necessarily a quick break. I'm finna. Yeah, no, these niggas is clowns, fatty. I'm finna make a bowl of cereal and then I'm gonna be right back. I'm back. Give me 2 seconds. All right, let's get back to it.
He really put his foot down on that one, didn't he? Moving on, we have Kevin Warsh, Trump's current pick to replace Jerome Powell as chairman of the Federal Reserve, who also apparently went visiting on the island for the very same party, making me wonder just how many people in the current administration were straight up friends with the guy well and truly after his conviction in 2008. However, just to reiterate one of my sort of pillar arguments here, the greatest blunder by far are the redactions. Frankly, I'm honestly baffled. They redacted a fucking Wikipedia article from 2022 about Trump. Look here. This is an archived version from the exact same time period where they took out words in the DOJ files like Italia, DC, and Stone, as in Roger Stone, despite his name appearing 7 other times in the same article. You could not possibly fuck up these redactions any worse if you literally tried to. It's straight up insane how many completely unnecessary and totally irrelevant redactions are in these files. Not to mention the stuff that they just messed up or failed to do. How about this? Here's another troubling exchange. Email from Epstein to an unknown individual. Quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." To which the unknown person replies that they're in China. Epstein then says, "Hope to see you."
What the fuck?
Alarmingly, that's not even the only mention of torture, because in September of 2011, we have these emails between a man named Tancredi Marchiolo and Epstein, in which Epstein says, quote, "What would you like me to do with your friend? Do you want me to try to do her, or just torture her?" Tancredi Salvatore Marchiolo, as far as I can tell, is a hedge fund guy, formerly a partner at Bremner Capital, and now potentially working at a place called Harbor V Limited as a director after using a slightly different name in the filings. Not entirely sure who this guy is, but he shows up a lot in these files directly with Epstein, like well over 1,000 mentions.
Excuse me, sir, how old were you when you made your first million?
What is this for?
We're trying to get advice for the younger generation.
I made my first million last year, actually.
What line of work are you in?
I'm in sales.
Okay, what's the best advice you can give someone that's in sales?
You're only as good as your sales.
Going on a bit of a tangent right now, some people may not be fully aware of the scope here. This isn't just Epstein and a few friends and I care more about these other policies. This is a collection of the richest and most powerful people in the entire world who enabled and perpetuated the abuse for years. Here's another interesting bit. This is an email chain between Epstein and the Russian deputy economic minister at the time, Sergei Belyakov. Quote from Epstein, "How are you? I need a favor. There is a Russian girl from Moscow, blank, attempting to blackmail a group of powerful businessmen in New York. It is bad for business for everyone involved. She arrived in New York Saturday or last week staying at blank." End quote. And the reply that he gets says, quote, "Give me a few days to get information about her," followed by, "Hi, Jeffrey. Tomorrow I'm meeting with a guy who knows her / about her. If you have any details about case you have mentioned, it could help." End quote. In response, Epstein says, "Saying powerful men taking advantage of women like her, etc." And I don't know what eventually happened to this poor girl, but I really don't think that they just bought her donuts and said, "Hey, please stop." We are being told by the Trump administration with their intentionally compromised law enforcement agencies that there was no
literally silencing everybody.
Epstein was alone. There were no other prosecutable leads, no other perpetrators to investigate or involved or trafficking to anyone or by anyone, and that we should shut up and stop asking questions. The FBI director has been saying that. The attorney general has been saying that. All of his top officials are backing him when they say that there's nothing to see. Meanwhile, we have literal correspondence between Epstein and Russian officials about a young woman blackmailing powerful businessmen because they took advantage of her, which was the entire premise of what Epstein did. And yet, also this Tancredi Marchiolo guy, I mean, you have people corresponding with Epstein thousands of times saying that they're giving and receiving torture videos from him, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, Somehow this
That's just
painfully
crazy.
self-evident spiderweb of perpetrators and their sick, twisted social network have faced zero consequences. The Epstein files may not result in widespread accountability, okay? Dejectedly, I'm accepting that fact. But the one thing that they have done is pull back the curtain for a whole lot of people on who exactly runs the world. They're not like you and me. They're fucking evil. I could go on and on and on, so for the sake of the video not being 10 hours long, here's one final critical document. If you search during the first party in the DOJ archive, you get 3 items. 1 in dataset 9 and 2 in dataset 10. This is an extremely graphic accusation against Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, alleging a victim that was only 13 years old. And each of these 3 documents has different redactions. Document 1 has address, case number, and half of the names redacted. Document 2 redacts the names, but not the address or the case number. And document 3 only redacts half of the address and the case number, but not the names. Collectively, in my view, these 3 documents perfectly exemplify the incompetence of the Epstein cover-up.
Yep.
All 3 of them fail, in every single conceivable sense of the word, to not only uphold the law as ordered by Congress, but also to protect personal information and the identities of potential victims, while also over-redacting the case number, with no justification, in a triple threat display of abject, complete, disgusting, and shameful failure. This administration is a corrupt, incompetent circus. Genuinely, the only thing that I can think of now is that they used an AI program to do these redactions.
He said that perfectly. It's a fucking circus, literally. No organization at all. Give us bullshit ass answers, and then when you confront them about it, they act like you're in the wrong. Straight bullshit.
Unironically, I think that's like the most likely situation. Nothing else explains why random words would be redacted. Fragments of public Wikipedia articles censored, with so many duplicate documents that all have different portions removed. Everybody gets hyperbolic on YouTube, I understand that totally, but this is the most pathetic display I have ever seen from the United States government. As kids, even as young adults for that matter, people often think, well, it's a big official agency, therefore they must have at least some experts in the room, and it makes sense. Why wouldn't they? We get caught in this sort of intellectual trap of assuming that people in those positions of authority are somehow deserving of that position. By nature of them having it, they must be, right? But the sad reality is that the people running this country right now at the highest levels of government and law enforcement and civil service are fucking morons. They're corrupt, self-dealing, manipulative snakes who lie about their associations, their motives, and their history, where the only solution, in my opinion, is to jail them. I doubt it's ever going to happen, but hey, I'm allowed to dream. Documents are obviously still being released. Dataset 12 is now live, which I'm already starting to go through, and I can almost guarantee that this won't be the last time I talk about all this stuff. But for right now, that's it. Hopefully this is a little bit of a more comprehensive look at the files than a lot of other people have done so far, but yeah, that's all of it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. A special VPN deal, of course, locals and Patreon, channel memberships, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.
Appreciate you, brother. And like you said, question everything and be vigilant. I had to be vigilant part, but yeah, y'all get it. This shit is crazy. Give me one moment. Let me go put this bowl in the sink really quick, and then we'll start up another video. One second. What is wrong with my shit? Okay, perfect. All right. Un momento, por favor. All the goddamn hoopla. All this hoopla. All right. After this, we'll probably go to some TikToks because I feel like TikTok is quicker with the information. Like these are great breakdowns. I'm fully enjoying these, but there's just some stuff on TikTok that I have seen that I feel like would be really good for y'all to see as well.
You love building high-performing websites, but you don't love having to chase clients down for content.
It only gets worse from here. We're going back into the 3 million documents. So far, we mostly covered how billionaires lied about their relationship with Epstein and or got blackmailed in the drafts, eventually killing their marriage. We talked about Howard Lutnick, how he lied about meeting Epstein, although he still denies this. And we also talked about some horrible accusations against Trump and Bill Clinton, although we were clear that they are unverified. Now, some people have responded to the release, like Elon Musk, saying that no one fought harder for the full release of the Epstein files than I did. Ironically, he claims that he knew that the playbook of the far-left propagandists and legacy media is admit nothing, deny everything, and making counter-accusations, saying he had never set foot on Epstein's creepy island or attended parties, despite the fact we saw last time that Elon was asking to be invited to the party. What day and night would be the wildest party on your island? Nevertheless, I think it's an interesting point. The playbook, as we get into this much darker side of the 3.5 million files, you're gonna notice this trend is true, that everyone we're gonna talk about, basically they admit nothing, they deny everything, and then they usually make counter accusations against other people in the files. Almost no one has faced any kind of consequences for this whole thing, leading me to wonder, why is it that it seems like really only in the rest of the world has anyone faced anything? I mean, you've got the former Prince Andrew losing his title. You've got the Slovakia National Security Advisor resigning over the Epstein links. But in America, I'm really hard-pressed to think of anyone who has actually faced any kind of accountability. I think Larry Summers stepped back voluntarily. But other than that, it's hard to think of anyone who's faced any kind of justice. In fact, arguably, Ghislaine Maxwell's life is better than it was previously since these Epstein files have dropped. And what's crazy about this is that we know that the government story is false. Remember, the FBI documents showed they had 10 co-conspirators they were investigating. We also got an old draft of an indictment where they had several co-defendants with Epstein. Now, of course, we know these were never ultimately charged. This was back in 2005, but just imagine all the way back in 2005, where these charges are from, we already had evidence that Epstein was not working alone, and of course he's not. But now we're gonna talk a little bit about how the scheme operated. Now, to be clear, we're gonna talk in a second about the laundering of Epstein's reputation, the people who protected him this whole time. But right now, I wanna talk about how Epstein got some of these girls in the first place, because the Epstein files provide an interesting look behind the curtains. Obviously, we know Ghislaine Maxwell was helping, whether it be procure the girls, talk them into stuff. But now we have emails of a different side of the scheme. It says, yesterday I spoke to Daniel Syed, who Jean-Luc Brunel describes as a scout or recruiter of girls or women for Jeffrey Epstein. Attached to this incoming email from Brunel is the contact information he has for Syed. And then they blacked out his number and email. But digging into Jeffrey's emails with Daniel shows that he was constantly sending him links to girls. It shows Jeffrey Epstein paying Daniel 3,000 euros, which, to be clear, was the amount that was agreed to by Jean-Luc Brunel. Quote, Dominique, we will pay him 3,000 euros each month for scouting for a 6-month period. On all models we will get him, we will pay him 5% commission on their earnings. Imagine it's like baseball or it's like basketball. You're scouting for, I hate to use the word talent, but that's really what this guy was doing. He was going around the globe trying to find people for Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. According to one lawsuit, Epstein trafficked a Jane Doe to Jean-Luc Brunel many times. It describes their operation as this: many of the girls came from poor countries or impoverished backgrounds. He lured them in with a promise of making good money. Quote, Brunel has been a model scout for various modeling agencies for many years, and he was apparently able to get U.S. passports for young girls to work as models, eventually, of course, being sent to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it should be noted that...
So, that also makes me feel like he works with actual modeling agencies. Like, he has actual connections in the modeling world, and he uses those connections to prey and traffic on these young girls. There's I want to say the Chinese performing art school that goes traveling around the world. That they have these big shows where like they're doing dances and stuff like that. I live in Las Vegas. There's a show that they have out here. I forgot the name of it, but I've seen a TikTok about how they're actually involved in the trafficking of young girls, and it's crazy, and it's like it's worldwide, and we're like I said earlier, this is the tip of the iceberg. We're barely scratching at the surface of this shit. This shit runs so deep. Every continent is involved in this. TikTok about how they're actually involved in the trafficking of young girls, and it's crazy, and it's like it's worldwide, and we're like I said earlier, this is the tip of the iceberg. We're barely scratching at the surface of this shit. This shit runs so deep. Every continent is in a TikTok about how they're actually involved in the trafficking of young girls, and it's crazy, and it's like it's worldwide, and we're like I said earlier, this
That's
is
what
the
the
tip
nigga
of the
name
iceberg.
wrong.
We're barely scratching at the surface of this shit. This shit runs
Who gives
so
a fuck,
deep.
though?
Every continent is involved in this. In a TikTok about how they're actually involved in the trafficking of young girls, and it's crazy, and it's like it's worldwide, and we're like I said earlier, this is the tip of the iceberg. We're barely scratching at the surface of this shit. This shit runs so deep. Every continent is involved in this. In a TikTok about how they're actually involved in the trafficking of young girls, and it's crazy, and it's like it's worldwide, and in a TikTok about how
that Jean-Luc Brunel himself died in prison by hanging, and that's while he was being accused of horrible crimes related to trafficking and minors. So this guy is not a good guy. He was part of the op along with Daniel Syed, who was also scouting on behalf of Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. They had their agreement. Here's a sample of how this would work. Jeffrey Epstein asked him to take a full body shot of someone. Daniel Syed says, now she is really skinny, I will do Polaroid. Jeffrey Epstein asks for a copy of her passport and then asks, how many tickets do you want for Woody, meaning Woody Allen? He says 2. Okay, thank you. Full body if possible. And then Jeffrey Epstein says, doesn't look too happy. Comments on her body, and then he says she is very sweet. I'll skip a few of the sordid details here. They comment about her body extensively, and then Jeffrey Epstein says, I sent a request. Does she want to come out to Paris on Sunday? He says, I will invite to come. And this is basically how it worked. Daniel Syed flew around the world looking for women, sending photos to Jeffrey Epstein, who then would get a copy of their passports and bring them to the States. Here's an example of this. Daniel Syed brings him a girl. They didn't redact this name, but I'm going to do it. He says, very nice, easygoing, dream to work in the United States or visit the United States working as a model in Dubai. He asks age. Daniel says 22 or 23. I forgot to ask her. She looks younger. I have her number if you want to call her. She was going to send this evening. And this happens over and over. At one point, he talks about a Thai actress. Jeffrey Epstein says he can see her on Wednesday, and then he complains that she wants to meet in a restaurant. I don't do that in New York, and then says she didn't even respond. Not nice. The point is, a lot of these girls were looking to come to the United States for one reason or another, for some kind of dream. They would ask for passports or visas, and then ultimately get sent here by this network of people who would later be accused of trafficking or other abuses. Now, to be clear, there have not been charges against Daniel Syed, and the government, remember, says they have no evidence to go even predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So it's a little bit bizarre to be reading about this scouting operation for Jeffrey Epstein, the way he recruited girls, and then be told, yeah, nothing to see.
So they need probable cause. The evidence at hand shows that he was paid by Epstein to scout young girls and traffic them. How can you not prosecute on that? I'm not that diverse, that well informed on legal things, but if you have documentation of somebody getting paid for something multiple times, emails explaining where these payments are coming from, how much they're supposed to be, and then what he's doing for these payments, how can you not prosecute? It shows me that they don't want to fucking do nothing.
Here, yeah, one of the scouts was like this, like...
Okay, I thought paying rent like this was impossible, but turns out it's not. Flex helps you pay rent on time after your initial payment to Flex. So you never have to worry about late fees or awkward "where's the rent" text. Then you just pay Flex back in smaller bite-sized payments that works for your budget. And the best part, Flex reports your on-time rent payments to TransUnion. So you're not only reducing stress, you're building your credit history every month. So if rent is stressing you out, you gotta head to getflex.com and try it out for yourself.
Never ever sue the driver who crashed into you after a car accident. There's a better way to get compensated that's faster, easier, and could get you way more money without spending years in court or paying expensive lawyers.
Who himself in jail. But yeah, no, there's no one else here, even though there's definitely guys floating around. Even though we literally have redacted defendants in our old draft of an indictment. We have nothing to do. We can't possibly imagine doing anything. And that brings me to one of the frustrating parts of these whole files, is the redactions. I mean, I know I've been over this, but it's a different thing. In the past, the files were sort of overly redacted to protect people. The problem this time is not only are a lot of people still being protected, like literally the names of the people they were going to charge, you couldn't argue those are victims, but the work was just done so sloppy that oftentimes you'll find that the DOJ has uploaded 2 documents that are functionally identical, and they redacted one but not the other, letting you see what's ultimately behind the mask, which is dumb because sometimes the thing they're redacting is Jeffrey Epstein's name. Or other times it's somebody who clearly is not a victim, because then you see the non-redacted copy and you're like, yeah, that's clearly not a victim. So it's a little strange what they seem to have done here. Let me give you a for instance. So we have this message from somebody whose name is blacked out, and we see participants, and then we see Jeffrey Epstein is involved, right? And it says, we need to work around your 38. We need to push back on the lies, then crush the pedo trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as a philanthropist. Now, I want to know who's doing that. Who's trying to rebuild Jeffrey Epstein's image, right? Well, we go ahead, we scroll down, and we see that Jeffrey Epstein sends something. He says, in any bar where drinking age is 18, and you see the participant is once again blacked out. But underneath it, in a separate file, we see Steve Bannon,
that can't
a famous
be in the States, because the drinking age out here is 21. So that has to be somewhere overseas.
Political figure is in here, and he's saying the same thing. He says, first, we need to push back on the lies, then crush the trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as a philanthropist. Guys, why did you censor out his name? Or, like, why was that censored at all? I don't understand. And I certainly don't understand why Jeffrey Epstein's name in this one is censored. So Jeffrey's not censored in this one, but Bannon is, and then Bannon's not censored in this one.
There's a lot of inconsistencies in the redactions.
And sometimes this creates the bizarre impression that they are censoring for victim names or for some like kind of victim status or for some reason, And then you see the other file and you're like, wait, why did you do this? It's just very poorly done throughout. That's just something I wanted to comment on, is not only did they once again not fully redact things because they were sloppy, but also like victims' names got stuck in this. Like girls' names appear sometimes, and like I'm not sure, are they supposed to be redacted? Because they're redacted over here, they're not over here. I can kind of figure out who it is. It's just kind of a mess. I needed to point that out. You know, other times we have things like this, like Brock Pierce, a co-founder of Tether, also known as the biggest stablecoin in the world. He sent a message to Jeffrey Epstein with the subject line Anastasia, and then it's just a bunch of redacted stuff with a few untitled JPEGs in here. And so, you know, you're thinking to yourself, what is this? Is he sending some illicit media? Like, what is this? Well, then we have this page where it wasn't redacted. I put that little dark square that I didn't know if this should have been redacted or not. But it's like a bunch of JPEGs. Now, does that contain victims? Is Brock Pierce sending photos of victims? I don't know because of the way the government did this. But underneath, it says, the Ukraine is now my favorite country, smiley face, Brock Pierce, with the subject line Anastasia. I don't know what to make of that. I'm just saying, the redactions, like the...
Sorry to keep pausing, but one thing I heard about the war between Russia and the Ukraine is that it had to do with the sex trafficking ring there. And for him to say that adds on to the validity of what I've heard, because I heard that is very big out there. This is fucking crazy. So the world's a stage and everything's fucking connected.
The way they did this is not good. But now let's return to Steve Bannon and his "we're gonna crush the trafficking" narrative. Because this guy, oh boy, has been revealed in the files to being like Jeffrey's right-hand PR man. I mean, this guy was filming basically a documentary about Jeffrey Epstein in order to rehabilitate his image. And some of it has actually leaked to the public. It's been interesting to watch how that's been received. But the funny thing is that originally Jeffrey Epstein's plan was to just do a YouTube video, like an apology, like a old school 2016, turn on the camera for authenticity and saying, you know, he says, do you think I can do my own video interview and upload it to YouTube? No sandbagging, interview format, or like a diary piece. Steve Bannon says if you do an interview, it can't be like Johnny does a YouTube. It has to be amazingly professional and perfectly cut. Then Jeffrey Epstein responds, Woody, we assume Woody Allen, because they were close, said he would help edit. Not sure how to stage, what points to make. But better than trying to do an interview that I have no experience doing. Goal is to humanize the monster. Anything written carries little weight. To which Steve Bannon replies, yes, Jeffrey Epstein, should it be an interview format, interviewed by me? They start talking about, like, how do we do this? Humor, apology, how did I get rich? Question mark, topics. Their brainstorming, how do we trick the public into seeing me as more than a monster? Now, funny enough, right before this, Jeffrey Epstein asks about a dinner with Woody, and then he says, or too many pedos in one place.
We got that reggaeton.
We got that reggaeton.
You guys send me, okay? So.
And you gotta love the self-awareness there. Now, I don't know what he meant by that. To be clear, I'm not making that accusation against Woody Allen. We'll talk about him in a second. That's Jeffrey Epstein saying that. I think what's interesting to point out, though, is how all these rich and powerful people are circling the wagons to try to protect Jeffrey Epstein's reputation, right? This is a guy who at this point has been known for years to have pled guilty to these 2008 charges. This was an open secret. And so Steve Bannon goes along though anyways, and he films this documentary. Now what's interesting is he starts talking about the documentary and he starts saying, I'm watching our second hour now. Guys were blown away. I didn't think it was as strong at the time, but I was wrong. Need huge part about threat of AI versus reality, threat of climate change. And this is where the notes start going back and forth of how can we get you to think of other things? So part of the conceit of this big interview of Jeffrey Epstein was to try to humanize him and actually present him as this genius, everyman, quirky guy with a few flaws, right? They knew they couldn't run away from the crimes. To quote, in Bannon's words, yes, 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 of course, but we must counter this to traffics and female children to be by world's most powerful, richest men. That can't be redeemed. Can't redeem the unredeemable. You are a lot of things which we will show, but you are not that. Bannon is aware that, like, they can't fully embrace the Epstein thing. They have to kind of make it about more than that. And if you see the YouTube clip going around, that's what that is. And it's been so interesting to watch the reaction because you see...
I know exactly what he's talking about. That video was the very first time that I've ever heard Epstein speak. That was the first time I heard his voice. They did a good job at trying to convey him as a normal guy. But for myself, I could not look past who he is, the monster that he is. And in that video, you can see that he's trying to show you something different, to show you that he's not that monster. But I'm very good at reading people, and I look at people's eyes. Like I'm very gifted in that area. You can see that there's something just hidden and dark in him. Like he just, through his smile, it just looks like darkness. Like behind his eyes, it doesn't look like a good person lives there.
Even for people who've been prepped with the idea that this is basically propaganda, some of them still fall for it. They post things like, bro is casually confirming the world's conspiracies because he's talking about 2008. But guys, that's the whole deception. They're like trying to be like, hey, this guy, this horrible monster, he's going to tell you the secrets of the inside club. So you think more, that's the whole thing. That's how they're getting away with this. It's not some kind of, oh, he happened to want to talk about this. This is all premeditated. This has gone through revisions. They even called Jeffrey Epstein the smartest guy in the room.
Look, you're the smartest guy in the room, right? You know that.
There's only two of them in the room.
Anyone believes the false conceit of, you're obviously the smartest man in the room. You could tell us the world's secrets. I mean, this guy, honestly, he talks about some of his engagements, like with the Rockefeller board, and he tries to say that owning a calculator is why he got that.
It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator, where it could, by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street. The most important parts of business were really now going to calculations. Places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced, it was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board, potentially sit on the finance committee?
So we're honestly supposed to believe that Jeffrey Epstein got into this prestigious Rockefeller board because he had a calculator, but also that he's the smartest guy in the room, the smartest man on Wall Street. And let's not talk about those horrific crimes he committed because, he's not really such a bad guy after all. But it wasn't just Steve Bannon that was trying to humanize or giving advice on how to humanize Epstein. It was also Richard Branson, the famous billionaire. He was caught emailing Jeffrey Epstein saying, "Dear Jeffrey, it was really nice seeing you yesterday. The boys in water sports can't stop speaking about it. Anytime you are in the area, would love to see you as long as you bring your harem." I don't know, that's not that ambiguous, guys. I think we can imagine what that means. But anyways, he says, one, I think if Bill Gates was willing to say that you've been a brilliant advisor to him, that you slipped up many years ago by sleeping with a 17-and-a-half-year-old and were punished for it, that you've more than learned your lesson and have done nothing that's against the law since. And yes, as a single man, you have a penchant for women, but there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, something along those lines. He's giving him PR advice. How to get your reputation back. Hey, Jeffrey, privately, I loved you. You can come back anytime with your harem. Jeffrey Epstein responds, nice seeing you. Thanks for your hospitality. I appreciate your public relations thoughts. Now, according to the New York Times, a Branson representative said the two had a business meeting and stressed the women were adults and had not attended the meeting. All above board. That's what everyone says, by the way. Remember what Elon Musk said, right? That's the playbook. Admit nothing, deny everything. Speaking of, remember Howard Lutnick, who we showed on video saying that he had never seen Epstein since 2005.
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Although also calling him the greatest blackmailer ever.
This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever.
Well, also according to the Times, Lutnick said he spent zero time with him, even though there are emails basically to the contrary, where Epstein is saying, nice seeing you after the conviction. I mean, these people, not only are they lying, they won't even admit when they've been caught lying. But now let's talk about Prince Andrew, too, who was caught lying over a woman at some kind of a party. I mean, just not a good, this is not doing you any favors, you know. I know Prince Andrew soon will probably be on the comeback tour. It's going to be a bunch of highly paid PR execs. Maybe Steve Bannon can jump in, shoot another 5-hour podcast trying to rehabilitate him. Like, Prince Andrew, what's the secret behind the royal family?
Look,
I dare you to let me build you a completely free e-commerce store, preload.
No,
you're the smartest guy in the room.
But again, has he
My bad.
admitted anything? Has he denied
As
everything?
St. Anthony
We should also
Davis
probably
got
talk
traded
about Noam
again.
Chomsky as well, the guy behind the book Manufacturing Consent, which in hindsight, maybe we should have suspected something. But either way, he also sends some reputational advice to his buddy Jeffrey Epstein. He says, I watched the horrible way you've been treated by the press and public. It's painful to say, but I think the best way to proceed is to ignore it. When the vultures dearly want is a public response, which then provides a public opening. In general, I think it's best not to react unless directly questioned, particularly in the current mood. That's the best advice I can think of. Noam. Now, he sends that to Matthew Hiltzik of Hiltzik Strategies, who is a also famous PR guy, I guess, trying to help Epstein, I assume, who responds, I think that is wise. Now, later talking with Bannon, Epstein loops in Hiltzik again. He says, Matt Hiltzik thought your idea was epic. Hypocrisy of the liberal left. And he says, yep, he would confidentially like to sit and help if you like. This is Matthew Hiltzik. You know, a lot of powerful people basically were bending over backwards, left, right, center, trying to rehabilitate this guy's image. And the question is, why? Why were all these guys so interested in their precious Jeffrey Epstein if they had no involvement? I mean, that's the part I can't figure out it, because all of them deny it. All of them don't admit anything. And so what exactly is the problem? But now it's time to talk about Elon Musk's brother, Kimball Musk. He was also in the files. Jeffrey was copied on an email talking about Kimball's 40th birthday, where the password to the secret party was riot. And then in all caps, Boris, the sender of this email, says, I am not joking about the password. This was in 2012 in September. Now that's important because a little bit later, Kimball Musk is emailing Boris Nikolic and Jeffrey Epstein, and he's talking to them about being connected with some redacted name and saying, I believe you both played a role, whatever that means. Now, whether this was at the party or, you know, right after their meeting in October, I don't know. But what's interesting is Boris responds and says, Kimball, just FYI, you better be nice to redacted. Jeffrey goes crazy when someone mistreats his girls/friends, so better be very nice to her. Kimball Musk responds, message received, wide and clear. Then he says, seriously, I'm very happy with my time so far with Jennifer. She's great. Now, again, was that supposed to be a redacted name we just read? Like, I don't know. They've been redacting it in earlier emails.
Right, y'all redacted it twice, and then the third time y'all ain't redacted.
But what I
they
can
ran
figure
this
out
shit through
is
a
that
program.
a
They
little
didn't
while
have
later,
somebody
a few days
actually
later,
go through and redact
Jeffrey
shit.
Epstein gets an email. Now we know Kimball credits the meetup and says Boris and Epstein were responsible in some way for this. But now Jeffrey Epstein's being emailed about Jen's schedule. Is that Jennifer? I mean, it seems like it because Jen's schedule for the rest of the year, and it seems like the assistant has copy and pasted Jen's response because she says, Sue, these would be dates in November, and then starts saying, you know, this, she can go to New York. She says the 29th to the 7th, she's free. Kimball to New York. Then she says, Kimball, Jen, London. Kimball, Jen, London to Morocco, ? Then she has a break, and then it's Jen, Kimball, St. Bart's. Assuming we're not sick of each other by the end of November. Now, I can't figure out why is she running this schedule about when she's hanging out with Kimball, who Jeffrey set her up with. Like, why is she running this by Elon Musk? To be clear, I don't know. You know, there could be, I guess, innocent explanations for this. Maybe, I don't know. But all I see are constant, powerful people either being introed to girls, talking about the harem, talking about beautiful ladies, and the FBI, they can't figure it out. They have no evidence to even investigate third parties. Why? I guess because they're rich and powerful. Around the world, we're seeing resignations, we're seeing people lose their status. But here in the United States, we've got like multiple presidents in the files. We've got the world's richest man in the files, several of the world's richest men in the files, and we just can't drum up any kind of evidence. It's just incredible to me. Now, I also want to talk about another rich and powerful person, and that is Peter Attia. He's a podcast bro, he's a longevity expert, and actually, funny enough, I read his book, and that's gonna come into play here in a second because, oh boy, did I get some additional context. But let's start here with something that Peter Attia sent Jeffrey Epstein. He says, subject, got a fresh shipment. And then Epstein responds, me too, and there's a completely redacted image. Is that a girl? Is this bad redactions? You know, we don't know, although we'll find out in a second because later Peter responded to this. But Peter says, please tell me you found that picture online. Jeffrey responds, got a fresh shipment, afraid not. Peter responds, you know the biggest problem with becoming friends with you. The life you lead is so outrageous, yet I can't tell a soul. Why, Peter? Why can't you tell a soul? Why don't you tell us now?
Right.
Now that it's all out in the open, why don't you tell us why you can't tell a soul?
Yeah, Peter.
The secrets or
Do
the
tell.
life
Do tell.
that Epstein leads. And then we get another redacted photo, right? And then some more images, and Peter says, please tell me that's not where you actually are. And Jeffrey says, you can see the gym in the middle, just me and 4. And Peter says, I think you might have a more interesting life than the Dos Equis guy. Is this off the coast of France? No, it's my island in the Caribbean near St. Thomas. If you go to the Google Earth and type in Little St. James. Beautiful. Isn't that nice? Behind closed doors, it's beautiful. In public, you know, we'll hear about what a monster this guy is, right? But behind closed doors, when nobody's watching, oh, it's beautiful. There's some other stuff Peter Attia said, which I'm not going to get into. I don't think it's very, appropriate for medical professionals to be saying such things. But, you know, this wasn't all business, right? This wasn't just doctor-patient kind of stuff. There's a lot of guy talk, a lot of banter between the fellas about ladies. And maybe that's why Peter Attia says that hopefully Jeffrey Epstein is in town when I'm back in 2 weeks. I go into Jeffrey Epstein withdrawal when I don't see him. So guys, these two were close. I mean, apparently so close that, you know, Peter Attia goes into withdrawal when he doesn't see him. Peter Attia says, are you on island? Jeffrey Epstein says, P Beach, probably Palm Beach. And he says, what do you do when you get there? Jeffrey Epstein, guess. Peter Attia, besides that, I mean, they're not even trying to hide it, guys. This is barely code at this point. You know, what do you do? Guess. Well, besides that, Jeffrey, we know
arrogant.
what you do, right? So it's so funny that the
can't
FBI's like, we don't know. We can't tell what's out there. We have no evidence, right? No evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties and then proceed to dump on us a ton of evidence. At least to investigate, right? I'm not saying these people are guilty. Obviously, all of them deny, don't admit, blame other people, say other people are responsible for everything. So that is taken as a given. I am not accusing anyone here. I'm just saying, seems like we got a few leads here, fellas. Some people to look at. Now, I want to address the fact that Peter Attia has actually responded to this whole debacle. He says the following email is what I sent my team last night. I sent a similar version to my patients as well. You put your trust, your credibility, your hard work, what we built together, and I take that responsibility seriously. You deserve a complete and honest account of what did and did not happen. I apologize it did not get this out sooner. I wanted to be thorough. He says, I was not involved in any criminal activity. My interactions had nothing to do with his abuse or exploitation of anyone. I was never on his plane, never on his island, never present at any parties. That said, I apologize and regret putting myself in a position where emails, some of them embarrassing, tasteless, and indefensible, are now public. So it's this apology. You know, he addresses some of the things, and he says that some of it's just banter, right? Like I said, it's just guy talk, whatever that means. He claims that his got a fresh shipment was in reference to a photograph of bottles of metformin, and then Jeffrey responded with a photograph of an adult woman. I responded with crude, tasteless banter. He says one line in that exchange about his life being outrageous and me not being able to tell anyone is being interpreted as awareness of wrongdoing. That's not how I meant it at all. What I was referring to poorly and flippantly was the discretion commanded by those socials and professional circles. The idea you don't talk about who you meet. I don't know, Peter. This seems like revisionist history. A little bit. I mean, personally, to me, as I'm viewing this, you know, third hand, right? just from the outsider perspective. Now, Peter says he did ask Jeffrey about his 2008 conviction, because all this happened afterwards, right? He characterized it as cross-related charges in 2018. I learned that this was grossly minimized. I was incredibly naive to believe him, and then later explains that in 2018, November, he read the Miami Herald investigative article, told him he needed to accept responsibility for what he did, and said he even asked Epstein to provide therapy to Epstein's victims, which is an interesting approach to have here. Now, the funny thing is, there are some more emails between Peter Attia that we need to read, because remember that he said he read this 2018 article from the Miami Herald. I believe it's this one by Julia K. Brown in November 28th. It's about Jeffrey Epstein assembling a large cult-like network of underage girls. But in December, Peter Attia says, home is very good, work stressful, making some changes. He asks him, what's the fallout from the recent story? Apparently talking about the Miami Herald. Now, maybe I just didn't see the emails, that where he was demanding accountability. I don't know what that's about, but Jeffrey Epstein says, same as usual, just tougher. Peter Attia says, legally, any change. Jeffrey Epstein, zero. So, I don't know. Maybe this whole you gotta provide therapy to, these victims happened. I haven't seen it yet. I definitely could see it. But it's just kind of shocking. I just kind of don't buy it. Like the whole, is there any change legally? That more sounds like you're covering yourself. I mean, just to be honest. But maybe I could look past all of that, if not for the thing we're about to see, which just in my mind is maybe the worst thing I've seen in the files. Not for its, explicitness, the amount of simping that people did for Jeffrey Epstein. Now they all say, oh, it was a personal mistake, blah, blah, blah. I regret it. I didn't look into it enough. But the level is just, you've never seen anything like it. So remember I said I read a book by Peter Attia. It was called Outlive, and he's supposed to be this doctor who knows a lot about longevity. So he writes it, and I picked it up because at the rate we're getting rid of these crimes, I need to live forever in order to try to stop some of these scams. But as I pick up this book, and one of the things in the book is Peter Attia kind of reflecting internally about how he's kind of been a bit, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a bit of a psycho in his life, and he needed to focus on family stuff. And so he kind of, it's almost a confessional of some embarrassing things in his life. And honestly, it comes off as very vulnerable, very self-reflective. He's this doctor telling other people what to do, but he's not a very good patient. That's kind of how it comes off. And one of the stories is awful. I won't go too much into it, but basically his son has this horrible medical emergency. It's described in this book like this. A few months ago, Tuesday, July 11th, 2017, that date is important. At 5:45 to be exact, I received a call from Jill, my wife. She was in an ambulance with our infant son. Now again, I'm not gonna get into the details here because, it's tragic and I'm not trying to bring that into it. What is relevant is that Peter Attia talks about how he stayed in New York and didn't show up because he was, quote, busy with his important work. Even today, just thinking about what happened, I feel nauseous about my behavior. I can't believe I did that to my family. Now, at the time I read that, and I was like, well, it's at least as good that you self-reflected on that. It's horrible, but, yeah, you were a bit of a psycho. But what's crazy, now we find out some of the important work, it's a little unclear, but some of the important work may have been Jeffrey Epstein, which is just, it's so dark.
What?
Remember, he says July 11th, 2017 is when this all happened. And then he says he did not come home to San Diego until Friday the following week, 10 days later. So July 11th, 2017, 2 days after this happens, he's talking to Jeffrey Epstein. And they seem to be coordinating about something. Sure, what time? Jeffrey Epstein, 9:30. Peter Attia responds, sure, I can come earlier. Also, if you have a hard stop at 10, let me know. You're hanging out with Jeffrey? I don't.
Your baby
I
just
don't
got
know what to
rushed to the
say.
fucking
This is
hospital.
out of pocket.
Like, I'm kicking it with Epstein.
There's no explanation for this. I didn't see this in the response from Peter. Maybe he thinks he addresses it because he already admitted that was like scummy, but
imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
That is just. There's a reason that didn't make it in the book, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't see that in the book when I read it. I didn't see I was actually you know, one of the things I needed to do, my important work, was seeing or talking to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, isn't that weird?
That's
like
weird.
That's the simping that I'm talking about. Is these people love this guy, or that's how it seems to me. Like, what are all these rich and powerful people doing?
They treated Buddy like he was a rock star.
Missing emergencies for Jeffrey, fawning over Jeffrey, asking for Jeffrey's harem, saying their biggest problem is the life they lead is so outrageous they can't tell us all. I mean, what is going on here? And is it true they all didn't know, right? Because, you know, I'm reading these documents, and it's hard to say who exactly knew what, when. But I don't believe, remember, they're all denying it, I don't believe nobody knew, right? Clearly, some people knew what was going on, and there's all this kind of coded language in the files where they talk about this stuff almost in like a nudge-nudge kind of way. I mean, here's some Woody Allen stuff. He was in the files. He says his business office, if you can make out the check to me, it looks very bad because then it looks like a gift to me. He says that to Epstein. He says, I don't want to be one of your women, or should I say, girls. And what's that? Oh, how do we... Come on, guys. Woody says, I would be much more expensive than your girls. You wouldn't be able to afford me. Jeffrey responds, yes, the price to pay would be too high. Woody says, this will be a beautiful friendship. And then Jeffrey says, as long as I follow orders, smiley face. Woody Allen sends a message saying Woody says the exact same thing, but in a dirtier way. Jeffrey responds, what did he say? Woody Allen, are you kidding? I can't put it in writing. I mean, no evidence, no evidence. Come on, I think I see a little bit of evidence. I'm squinting, but I think I can see a little bit of evidence. I mean, guys, like Jeffrey Epstein right here, where he's talking to a guy, he says, Paris with Woody, and the person responds, for le pedophile convention. And Jeffrey says, I think pedophile is the plural. I mean, no evidence. I mean, is that no evidence? That's nothing. We don't even want to question these people.
Right.
There's no investigations going on. So, yeah, it's honestly really sad to see how, look, I'm not saying people around the world are having crazy consequences, but a few people are resigning, thank goodness. You know, a few people are at least facing a little bit of scrutiny, but here Elon Musk lays out the playbook, apparently, for our guys. You know, we admit nothing, we deny everything, and we blame others. We just push the spotlight onto other people. And unfortunately, that's what you've seen the whole time from all the people in the files. You know, all of them say, oh, I was so happy these files came out. It's about shining accountability and justice for the victims, but I had nothing to do with it. Okay, so then where's the justice for the victims? So nobody, you know, all of you say somebody else had something to do with it, but everybody says nobody had anything to do with it. The FBI says they don't have any other, you know, investigations, any other kind of leads, despite the fact we have one of the procurers of the women just walking free, apparently. Like, no charges against him. Have we investigated him? I mean, it's just shocking how much the Epstein files show the powerful, how they protect their own, how so many of them knew what was going on, to the extent they found out later, a lot of them tried to protect Epstein, like literally make PR campaigns for his reputation. And this is a dark look at the state of the world, honestly, because Epstein happened a while ago, but the reason everyone cares is because there's other Epsteins around, right? There's other people evading accountability all the time. There's other people,
wolves in sheep clothing.
This band of billionaires and power brokers and PR people, even lawmakers, they circle the wagons and protect their own to the point you can never get accountability for anything. So anyway, that's it. It's a hard look at the Epstein files, but it's one we needed to do. But I want to make the disclaimer once again that, look, I've tried to read people's individual denials where I could, but you should just assume everyone that we are talking about firmly denies any kind of criminal wrongdoing. They deny anything untowards about any kind of minors. And given the fact that our government doesn't seem to want to investigate anyone, I would just assume everybody here is completely clear. And so I want to get all those caveats in here because we are talking about some very powerful people with enormous means. And I don't want to be seen as I'm saying stuff. I'm reading the files. I'm giving my personal opinion. But ultimately, this is an indictment of our FBI and the people in power. And that's what I think the Epstein files have really shown us. This has been a long road. Can you believe it all started over here? And we have come all this way with all these files coming out And it seems like the question is on the table. Are there going to be consequences?
Is there any chance that any of these individuals who partied with Epstein and engaged in, relations with minors will be prosecuted?
Well,
Any
look,
chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein, and so as horrible as it's not a crime to eat.
All right, that's all I gotta hear right there. Because it's basically the whole Diddy situation. You partied with Diddy, but you didn't commit a crime. Most of the people that partied with Diddy did something heinous, just like the people that partied with Epstein. Birds of a feather flock together. That's why they communicate. That's why they're so intrigued and trying to keep pushing the limits and keeping their group together and speaking so secretively. But that's the stream for today. I appreciate y'all so much for kicking it with me. This is my first reaction stream ever, so I'm gonna be doing more in this kind of format, but this is different things, things that happen, just everyday things, conspiracy, sports, the whole nine. But I appreciate y'all so much. I'll probably be on later today. Until next time, peace. Yes, sir.